I call to order the Gladstone City Council meeting for May 8th, 2018 at 6:30 p.m. Hello, how is everybody? This time last year was National Teachers Day, and it's still National Teachers Day, but it's also Happy No Socks Day, so had to throw in something a little bit different. Can't do the same one twice. Tonight we have a pretty packed meeting, so we'll start with our consent agenda, which is approval of the April 10th, 2018 regular meeting minutes, approval of the March bank balances, budget report for the period ending March 31st, 2018, approval of the March check register, legal project costs on projects, department heads monthly report for 2018. Our regular agenda is update on Metro activities by Metro Councilor Betty Dominguez and Andy Shaw, public hearing and action item for establishment of park system development charges, also called SDCs. You're going to hear that quite a bit. Both the public hearing and consideration to approve Resolution 1136, establishing those SDCs. Housekeeping related to Ordinance 1488 for the Urban Renewal Agency. Consider approval of the Senior Center Advisory Board Work Plan. Appointment to the Traffic Safety Commission. Presentation on the Urban Renewal Financing Structure for the Civic Center. Consider authorizing the contract for Phase 1 of the Progressive Design Build for the Gladstone Civic Center project. Consider approval of the First Amendment to an existing agreement for project management services of Shields Oblets Johnson for the Gladstone Civic Center project, and an update from the school board representative, Nicole Vera Cousins. Tammy, could you please call the roll?
Councilor Milch?
Here.
Councilor Neese?
Present.
Councilor Tracy?
Present.
Councilor Reisner?
Here.
Councilor McMahon?
Here.
Councilor Mercero? Mayor Stemple?
Here, could you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have a few agenda additions and corrections. We're kind of moving things around. So the first would be to move the school board update from the last to after item number 7, which is the update on Metro activities. Second would be to move the council training topic, which is currently under business from the council, to business carried forward, since we did talk about it last month. And then the last is that we're going to move the Gladstone Urban Renewal Financing Structure for the Civic Center presentation from number 12 to the first item on our regular agenda, because she's got conflicting issues. So do we have business from the audience. I want to make sure that everybody that wants to speak has submitted their yellow card. Everybody's done that. So usually I hold my meeting process comments for our regular agenda, but I'm going to go ahead and do it now, so I'm ahead of the game here. I'd like to say a few words regarding the City Council, and this is nothing new. I say this at pretty much every single meeting, but I still feel it's important that everyone understands our limitations. I think, first, the most important limitation is that we sit here representing the citizens of Gladstone, not our own personal agendas and beliefs. It's so important that we all understand that. There have been so many times when a decision being made doesn't align with what we would like, but after hearing our citizens' desires have gone another direction. Now, that doesn't mean that our personal beliefs have changed, just that we listen and act accordingly. As we discuss and consider matters, there are laws and rules we have to use as the basis of our decisions. These start at the federal state level, then filter down to our city's comprehensive plan, city charter, codes, and ordinances. We do not have the luxury of randomly making decisions, but instead have to be consistent and take a path that is defensible. I want you all to know that we appreciate the time that you spend here with us and participating in this process. The council will hold their comments from business of the audience from the end, where we have that placeholder. And my goal is to keep the meeting respectful, engaging, and I sure hope that all of you guys can help us do that. Thank you. So, business from the audience.
Nancy Eichstead.
Good evening. Just have a short thing here regarding Arbor Day. I wanted to address Mayor Stemple and the council on behalf of the Friends of Gladstone Nature Park and the Sherry Hildreth Ovarian Cancer Foundation. I want to thank all of those who supported our third annual Arbor Day celebration in the Nature Park. It was a great success. The weather turned in our favor, much like today. For the third year in a row, our neighbors, friends, family, and community members attended our event in spite of the clouds, and our attendance was doubled this year. We would like to thank all of our community partners and vendors in attendance. Each and every one of them brings more people to our park to appreciate the beauty and nature of that space. I would especially like to thank our sponsor, Print Sync, Fire Marshal Mike Funk, and the Gladstone Rescue, Sergeant John Christensen with Clackamas County Cadet Program, the LDS Church who provided parking for us, Jim Wynot and Steve Graves from the city shops, Leslie Robinette and the Gladstone Rotary Club with the Cracksburger students and Pastor McCormick who gave the blessing, the Oregon Department of Forestry, Mayor Stemple and Councilor Tracy, and Angelia and John Bemis who provided power for us. They're in the house on Webster Road. There's a complete list of all of our vendors, too many to read here, on our website. It's events like this where community members come together to celebrate things that are meaningful to us and make our town rich and worthwhile. So please save the date, Saturday, April 27, for our 4th annual Arbor Day event in the Nature Park next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next.
Bill Osborne.
Bill Osborne. I live in Gladstone. At the last meeting you stated you didn't know if censure was what the public is looking for. All we have asked for is that you do something. Maybe we need to be clear, ignoring it is not the something we are looking for. How can we build trust when complaining that people are complaining is the only action you will take when one or more of you is admitted to violating the law? In regards to a recall, is that the only way to hold elected officials accountable in Gladstone? Is that how this body wants to go down in history, in the history books, as enablers that people had to rise up against and remove from office because you can't police yourself? I was a bit confused at the last meeting. I understand you as a council asked clarifying questions, but I didn't see how Councilor Tracy's attempt to smear my credibility had to do with one of you violating the laws you preside over. With the statement that he had just 2 clarifying questions, what followed had nothing to do with the words I just had spoken to the council, just another manipulation. I suppose that silent deliberation is only reserved to those Councilor Tracy is beholden to. I suppose the words that fit this situation are integrity and credibility. While we're talking about credibility, let's remember the last council appointments. 2 of you admit to violating Oregon law to deliberate on who you would appoint. One of you even phoned in your vote. Some question if that is even legal, more to whether it was ethical. Regarding the accusations made by Councilor Tracy, first off, I'm just a guy in the audience, not a sworn counselor. You appear to have no issue with a city councilor violating the law. It seems hypocritical and self-serving to question me. Second, I will provide documentation that I did not do business in Gladstone, nor was I required to have a license to not do business. Perhaps just a little more research would have yielded the information that food is regulated by the Department of Agriculture. Stonewall Banks was a seafood business. They would not let someone sell fish out of their home, and my neighbors would surely notice something fishy was going on if I had. The only thing fishy here is why some of you think you're above the law. Councilor Tracy, you stated there need to be clear processes in place. Now when opportunity presents itself to do the right thing, you sit silently deliberating and attacking those you serve. I get it. Even though you've sworn to serve the people of Gladstone, you are indebted to others. We did not elect you to all be friends. We elect you to make a better Gladstone. When your egos get in the way of accountability and transparency, you are serving yourself, and Gladstone suffers.
Thank you. Next.
Angela Riley.
Hello. Angela Riley, West Clarendon Street. I'd like to start by extending thanks to Councilors Mercero, Neese, and McMahon for voting with the city charter instead of the advisory committee created by Mayor Stemple. Councilors Milch and Tracy have proven to be invaluable assets to Gladstone, bringing professionalism and unbiased resolutions to the table, being part of positive things happening in town. Thank you, guys. I would like to encourage the council to keep the food pantry and the clothes closet going by voting to contribute the money that they'll be losing from the budget. I don't want to lose this much needed charity, especially since it's when I plan to start volunteering. On another topic, it's time for the needs of our town to take a front seat and the attacks obstructing forward movement to end. A training session to help accomplish cohesiveness between council members is not illegal. Bickering over whether it's public or not, or controversial, is just a purposeful attempt to obstruct it. If there were anything questionable, it can easily be rectified in-house without the press. A few months ago in a training session, all of you agreed to a pact which you swore to have each other's backs and not attack one another. A good leader, a strong leader, would stop the circus in Gladstone now. She would make the training session happen instead of blocking it. She would personally ask Neil Reisner to please put it on his schedule. She would know that by insinuating that the rest of her council is doing something illegal publicly in the newspaper, is throwing them all under the bus. Citizens need to see you guys working together as a cohesive unit, getting things accomplished. This cannot happen if some of you are attacking each other or the group at large. If any of you feel you cannot work in a unified matter with this council, that person should step down. This letter shows where the attacks and the media circus in Gladstone comes from. Written by Bill Osborne, it states Tammy Stemple and Neil Reisner as both his and Patrick Mathis's personal references, including their contact information. Bill Osborne and Patrick Mathis have composed and sent dozens of similar disparaging letters attacking a council member and demanding removal. That's just a recall effort. That needs to go that direction, not making demands of everybody. I have copies for anyone interested and have submitted one to city as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
That's all I have.
Looks like we have one more that snuck in.
Sherry Hall.
Okay, I just kind of want to report a little bit to you and everyone in the room. Election Day is the 15th, which is 1 week from today. If you haven't gotten a ballot, call our office, and if you're eligible, we can give you a ballot or replace one you had. The last day to mail a ballot to get it to us on time would be Thursday of this week. After that, put it in drop boxes, and there's one right out here. Thank you. We have really slow turnout. I don't know if anybody's looking at our website, but you can get into the county website, go to elections, go to the May 15th election, and at the top of that page there will be boxes to click on, and one is for the returned ballots so far, and also the returned ballots now compared to the last two primary elections. We were thinking we're really having slow turnout, and it is lower than usual, but not many by number, because now that we have motor voter, which means you're required to register to vote when you go to DMV for anything, some people don't want to vote, so they don't turn their ballots in. So you can look at the percentage, it's low, but the number of ballots that have come in is a little bit closer. And we think it's because we don't have a really hot item on the election, except for the Gladstone Library measure. So Gladstone should have the highest turnout. But I just kind of wanted to remind you that it is election time. If you've got a ballot sitting home, please turn it in. These elections are expensive, and the way these citizens assist government in wasting money is by not turning back in your ballot. We're not getting the best bang for our buck. So please vote.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Tammy?
I have nothing, no.
All right, so the first item is the consent agenda. Any discussion? Would someone like to make a motion?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda items 1 through 6.
I'll second it.
Motion was made by Councilor McMahon and seconded by Councilor Neese. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda passed. Next would be correspondence.
Oh, I have none. Thank you.
All right, so we move on to the regular agenda, and this is the one where we've moved up item number 12, presentation of the Gladstone Urban Renewal Financing Structure for the Civic Center.
Okay. All right, Chad, you okay by yourself?
I'll survive.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you. I will take responsibility. I didn't understand that Carol had a commitment with her daughter in the airport, so thank you very much for rearranging the agenda. I think this is very exciting for us this evening. In your council packet, we are going to talk about the Gladstone Civic Center project with the new police department and the City Hall. Originally, we had put this as item number 12 so that we could talk with you and the public about how this project is going to be funded. However, please keep in mind that the next item on the agenda was for us to talk about the design build phase of the project, which will just be for one phase. So tonight, you are not approving a $13.8 million project. Tonight, you will be looking at the first design phase of that. However, you have all met Carol Samuels. She is our advisor with Piper Jaffray. In your packet tonight, you have a copy of the Urban Renewal Financing Summary and Structure Scenarios. So the city will be borrowing $3.8 million Urban Renewal Agency issue with a $3 million full faith and credit structured to pay off. We have put just a brief timeline together with you, and I'm going to have Carol do a brief presentation, and then we can ask some questions if you have them.
Thank you, Jackie, and thanks again to the council for your flexibility. I do have a good excuse. My daughter is finishing up her freshman year in college in Massachusetts, and I am getting on a red eye tonight to go help her pack. So, in any case, moving right to the table that is on the first page of your handout, just to refresh all of you and introduce the audience to the plan. As Jackie said, we are going to split the issuance between a full faith and credit to the tune of $3 million and an urban renewal backed financing for $3.8 million. The current expectation is this will be a bank placement whereby we seek through a bidding process feedback from banks across the country, whereby they submit bids, and we will select the best bid or bids. It is possible we may get differential bids for each piece, although we are planning on financing them simultaneously. So, the interest rates that are shown on the table that is in front of you were cushioned. It's a good thing. We had about a 0.5% cushion because interest rates have gone up since we ran numbers. However, they have not gone up as much as the cushion. So to the extent this was done today, we expect that the interest rates you see on this table of 3.75 for the urban renewal financing and 3.55 for the full faith and credit would be somewhat lower. Keep your fingers crossed that that continues. Moving now to the timeline, I'm just going to hit the highlights on what probably looks like a weedy document with a lot of back and forth. But the key starting with the bottom line, is that the expectation is you would have funds for the project at the end of July, specifically July 26th. That's the date that we anticipate that funds from the bank or banks will be wired to your account and will be available to use for projects. Prior to that, we anticipate going out for bids with the banks with a deadline of submitting their bids by the end of June. In order for us to do that, you on the council will have to approve a resolution that I anticipate will be before you at your next city council meeting in June, authorizing Jackie and Kathy Brucker to assist us in getting these bids and determining which is the best on the basis of interest rates and other provisions that, other covenants that they may require. As part of the bid effort, we will be putting together a term sheet and developing a more detailed document called the declaration that will be an attachment to your resolution, at least in draft form, that is a much lengthier document that goes into details in particular about the urban renewal financing. The types of details that go into the declaration include what your tax collection covenant needs to be, how much of your urban renewal taxes you are required to collect each year relative to the amount of debt service, what kinds of limitations there might be on your ability to add additional urban renewal debt, and there are certain formulas that go into those documents to give you a clear sense of when you can borrow more to the extent you wanted to and when you can't. Things like what kind of commitments you make to not return value to the rolls without first running through a formula to make sure that you can reassure your investors that you will have plenty of urban renewal money available to pay them back. That's kind of the key. So in the next couple of weeks, what we, city staff, and your bond attorney will be working on are the details of those documents. And there are a lot of line items here that go into, we'll send out a first draft tomorrow, then we'll run through, have a conference call, have a couple of other drafts, and then at the June meeting we will present it to you in close to final form. It is always possible that the banks, particularly on the urban renewal piece, will have comments and may ask us to make changes, and we'll be working with the attorneys and with city staff to determine whether those changes are worth making based on the bids we receive. So, that is basically what I wanted to cover, and I don't know if there are other things you wanted to go over, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions you might have.
So at our next meeting, the first June meeting, we're going to be able to look at these draft documents.
That's correct. And the purpose of tonight was to holistically talk to you about the project budget so that the public understood how these funds would contribute towards the Civic Center.
Okay.
So, and I also want to let the public know that staff has been working with the elected officials individually, providing you information, so this is not the first time that you have seen it this evening. But essentially, the city is very healthy with about $7.5 million in cash in their urban renewal fund, and we are borrowing the other $6.8 million to get to our 13.8. There are no new taxes associated with building the new city hall and the police department, and we really just wanted to make sure that you understood that we are planning to aggressively pay back this debt within 9 to 11 years, which is great because traditionally municipalities will do a 20-plus year payback. And so with that, I want to make sure the public knows that the complete project budget is on the website under the item number 12 on the council packet, and we've really tried to simplify for you the cost associated with that. So yes, now it gets aggressive between Carol and staff in regards to reviewing documents, and they will come back to you on June 12th for consideration.
Okay.
Question, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
So will there be any monies left over on a yearly basis for anything else besides paying this back out of the urban renewal district?
So I would say that for the next 11 years, the money that we're getting in is approximately $850,000, and that will all go towards paying off the debt. And then that project would get us to we would have about $1.5 million left at the end of the 11 years for us to do future projects. So I would say to you that I would not recommend that we do any other projects while we're paying off the City Hall and the Police Department. And then when those are aggressively paid off, we would come back to you and say, okay, you've got $1.5 million left that we can, before we hit our maximum indebtedness for the Urban Renewal Agency, and the City Council could decide if they would want to do future projects or dissolve the Urban Renewal Agency altogether. So I would say I would not be recommending that we use any money for any future projects except for this, the new Civic Center.
And we're talking big capital projects.
Correct.
Right, but not the road, all that stuff is already accounted for in the budget.
Right,
This
no,
is
I
different.
understand. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right,
Okay.
thank you very much. We look
Thank you.
forward to seeing that draft.
Have a safe trip.
All right, the next item on our agenda is an update on Metro activities by Metro Councilor Betty Dominguez and Andy Shaw. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mayor Stemple, council members, and community members. I'm so pleased to be here tonight as your Metro Councilor, along with Andy Shaw, our Director of Government Affairs, to talk to you about the potential general obligation bond we're proposing for the November ballot to help fund affordable housing. So, as you know, we've been working on that for some time now, and we've been listening to the different people around the region, visiting a lot of communities, a lot of city council meetings, and trying to find out from those communities what they feel their housing needs are. Our advisory committees, and we have two, have included a number of people from across all three counties, but the names that you may recognize here from Clackamas County are Martha McLennan, who runs Northwest Housing Alternatives. They have the only family homeless shelter in the county, Annie Ross House. Rich Swift, who is the Director of Health and Human Services and Housing for the county. There's also Mark Gamba, who's the Milwaukee mayor, and Chuck Robbins, who's the Executive Director of the Clackamas County Housing Authority. So they've been representing the county in these conversations and in these discussions. Under the proposal, and we're proposing at this point about $516 million bond, we could house as many as 10,000 people in up to 3,200 homes, assuming the constitutional amendment passes as well, and we can talk about that later. If that amendment is not approved, we would only be able to develop about 2,000 new homes and house 6,000 people. When we talk about developing homes, it can be either be new construction or it can be acquisition rehabilitation. The vast majority of the bond money would flow through to the local jurisdictions through your housing authorities, who have the best sort of feel for what's needed on the ground and have been doing this work for a long time and have the expertise. The proposal will also include a portion of the money being set aside for land acquisition and land banking, particularly in high transit corridors. I don't know if you've noticed, but since the Orange Line came into Milwaukee, rents in that community have risen by 50%. And we're hoping that with this money, Metro can then buy parcels, hold them until it's time to develop them into housing that's affordable to folks, and sort of beat the for-profit market rate developers who are out there looking at similar sites. We know that this money and this number of units that we're proposing isn't going to solve the whole problem. The problem is far greater than what that money can accomplish, but it's a step in the right direction. We know that we have a huge, staggering number of seniors, baby boomers, without retirement funds coming our way. I heard a number just today that 10,000 people turn 65 years old every single day in this country. So how are we going to house them, and people with disabilities, and moms and dads that are working hard but at lower wage jobs and can't make ends meet and aren't being well served by the market right now. And for example, in the North Clackamas School District, we have 600 homeless children, 300 in Oregon City, and I checked, it's about 38 here in Gladstone, so we're doing a better job of housing folks in Gladstone. But housing those families and those children and those seniors and folks with disability and those who are homeless would be one of the primary goals of this money. So I'm going to turn it over to Andy in a moment, but I just want to let you know that this is your chance as a council and as a community to tell us what's important to you, what you'd like to see done with the money, where your priorities might be, and, you know, think about what we're proposing and then ask any additional questions. And so now, Andy?
Oh, fantastic. We had a presentation. Looks like that's maybe getting loaded up now. If not, I'll just move ahead. What you would be seeing up here is a map of the region that shows rent increases over time. Over the last 3 years, Andy Shaw, Director of Government Affairs at Metro. Over the last 3 years or so, Metro has worked with our local partners, cities, counties, groups that are working on affordable housing, working with the homeless to understand the nature of the growing housing crisis. And what we have found is there are a number of tools at the local level, particularly with counties, but that we're falling behind our ability to serve our community, in particular those who make very little income, so 0 to 30% of MFI, which is the median family income, and then another tranche, 30 to 60%. And these are, you know, working folks making minimum wage or making very low incomes, seniors, and often people recovering from homelessness or trying to get out of homelessness. So the gulf in the number of homes available at very low rents in the region has grown over time, largely as the result of the housing crisis coming out of the deep recession in 2008-2009, where people continued to move to Portland in very high numbers because our economy was doing well relative to the rest of the country coming into 2010, 2011. We recovered much faster, in particular with high-wage jobs. And Portland, the Portland region being a lovely area to move to, a lot of folks have continued coming here. But we stopped building homes, just like happened across the rest of the country during the Great Recession. So you saw a real shortage of homes, causing prices to rise, causing rents to rise, and really putting pressure on the lowest income folks to be able to find housing. So if you could advance to the next slide. So last November, our council directed Metro staff to begin a process of exploring the possibility of putting a measure on the ballot in November to help be a part of the funding solution across the region to close this gap of homes for the very neediest families in the region. We found that there were lots of programs going on at the county level to operate, but not a whole lot of resource on the capital side to build actual housing. So the council found that the best role Metro could play is to bring resource to the table and help our local partners at the county level and our local nonprofits do the work they do so well, which is providing the actual housing. So the nature of the measure we're looking at is a general obligation bond, a property tax bond, that would focus on building new homes and acquiring existing residences that are lower cost now, but at risk of being flipped or of being remodeled and having the rents increase. So keeping those existing units permanently affordable. And doing that in partnership with our local governments and with nonprofit partners. So our goal is that Metro itself doesn't build any homes, but we are the funding partner for those who build homes now. If you could go to the next slide, please. So over the last few months, we have pulled together two separate stakeholder groups, a technical table and a stakeholder table, 50 folks all told, to give us advice on how to build a framework for this housing measure. The technical table really focused in on how do you model, let's assume it was a $500 million bond, how would you model the appropriate expenses for a single-family home that was rented to a 0 to 30% income person, a family home that's rented to someone making 60% of median family income, and how do you put that all together in a way that tells us what could you buy with that $500 million. Then the stakeholder table was really there to help us figure out what are the values driving this measure, and who are we trying to serve? Who are the target folks that we really need to serve with this measure? And combining those together, we've taken the values to say that we want to really focus in on the folks at the lowest income levels that are the neediest, and families with children that need larger bedrooms. So we've come up with a blend proposal of smaller units and larger units, and use that model to give you to come out with the numbers that Councilor Dominguez just mentioned. And I'll stop for a moment and mention this complexity of a constitutional amendment. So the legislature, at the urging of governments in our region and others, referred a constitutional amendment to the ballot for the same November ballot. And as a public servant, I can't take a position for or against it, so I'm just trying to state facts tonight. If approved, that measure would give flexibility to local governments that enact a general obligation bond using property taxes and define what low income means, that they could work with nonprofit partners and for-profit partners to actually build that housing. Right now, the Constitution restricts local governments from blending general obligation bond monies with nonprofit or for-profit funds. But that is how we build affordable housing today. We work with our nonprofit partners and others to build affordable housing, not usually anymore directly by the government. So we have crafted a proposal that has sort of a proposal A and a proposal B. A would be if the Constitution is changed at the same ballot. B would be if the Constitution is not changed.
May I add something? Just real quickly. Yep. So if the amendment passes and we're able to partner with our nonprofit and for-profit developers who do this housing all the time, they will be able to access a whole toolbox of funding sources that we as government couldn't access, which is how we would leverage additional funds and would give us that ability to put more units on the ground. So that's the part that's really key, is being able to bring in more resources in combination with the bond proceeds.
So it's the difference between 3,000 people being housed versus 10,000?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes. If you could flip forward 2 slides, please.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's about 2,000 homes with serving 6,300 people,
Okay.
if the Constitution's not changed, and 3,200 homes. Whoops, sorry. I'm not sure where I think the slideshow got messed up. That's okay. No, it's not your fault at all.
Okay.
The one that says overall impact shows the numbers. So with the Constitution being changed, we estimate about 3,200 homes and 10,000 people being served at any one time.
Okay.
And that's all given where we've landed with the input from all the stakeholders we pulled together about the right balance of single-bedroom units and multi-bedroom units to serve both families and individuals, people coming out of homelessness, seniors, others. So that's the proposal that we have on the table, and we're out seeking feedback about, are those the right types of folks to be really focusing on? How do those numbers feel? How does the size of the bond measure feel? At $516 million, which is what we estimate it would cost to build that number of units. It's about an average of $50 per year for the average homeowner. So for the average cost home in the region, about $50 a year, because the regional footprint is so large. Let's see, if you could go, there's overall impact. If you could go 2 slides forward, I think. It was quite a whiz-bang PowerPoint, but has to run through PowerPoint to do all the cool stuff. So the key goals of the measure would be to acquire land and build homes, and in some instances to acquire existing rental units and keep them affordable. And thirdly, to potentially acquire land along transit corridors so we can get ahead of potential displacement as values do rise in areas that are gentrifying, as Councilor Dominguez mentioned. If we could flip forward 2 more slides, please. So then, looking at income levels, where we have landed for this recommendation coming out of the stakeholder process is to focus 45% of the units in the homes that are built on those making below 30% of median family incomes, the very poorest of the folks that we're looking to serve. but at the same token, have at least half of the homes that we're looking to build serve families, so that we're really making a focus on these larger sized units to accommodate families with children, try to get at this terrible issue of kids that are surfing couches or living in cars or homeless and trying to attend school. We would have the maximum affordable amount be 80% of median family income, and have a cap on sort of how much could be in that higher level, 60 to 80%. Often you can blend those units into a mixed building, so you're getting higher rents from those 60 to 80% units that helps offset the much lower rents for the 30% units. So we've heard from our practitioners, those who manage and operate affordable housing through nonprofits, it's a smart thing to blend those things together. But it also creates a different kind of environment in the building in a community. If we could do two more slides ahead, please. Almost done. So the other thing that we talked about is, how do you distribute these homes? How do you distribute the targets throughout the region? And we looked at a whole number of different ways to answer that question. One is simply population, and spread the money out based on where people live. Another would be assessed value, and how much tax money is being raised from each part of the region. We also then looked at need. Where are people living today who have very low incomes or very high rent burden? Communities of color, where are they particularly rent burdened? But then we also looked at opportunity. Where are places that people might want to move to if they could move closer to transit, closer to a job, closer to schools that are high performing or have very few homeless students in them today. And when you blend all those things together, we got a number that was awfully close to the same value as assessed value and where the money's coming from. So we're recommending using those figures as the way to distribute out the targets for the number of homes, and the money would follow those targets, so that our county housing authorities and the four cities that receive federal funding for housing would receive those proportions of target units and the funding to go along with that to build the units. I'm trying to think of anything else that's a major thing to note tonight. Implementation, if you could go ahead three or four slides, where it says oversight and administration. The measure itself, if the Metro Council refers it, would lay out targets and goals, the amount of resource that the council would be asking voters to approve, but not all the implementation steps. We would need to work with the 3 county housing authorities, with the 4 cities that receive federal funds, and that's Gresham, the City of Portland, Beaverton, and Hillsborough, to really work out all the implementation steps of how these funds would flow to the local governments, how they would take on some portion of the targets that would be set regionally, what process they want to work through to identify partners to work with to develop homes. So all that would have to come after, during and after the actual election on the question. We would certainly put in place, as we have with previous bond measures like our natural areas bond measure and our zoo bond measure, an oversight process. So a citizen oversight committee to look at how the bond dollars are spent, look at the promises that were made and the outcomes that were achieved, to ensure that the Metro Council is informed about how we're doing and corrections along the way that might be needed. And then we would put in a commitment to the voters that no more than 7% of all the monies would be spent on administration, that we're getting the money out the door to actually build homes that people can live in. If we go 2 more slides forward, I think there's a timeline, and I'll end there. Again, we've been working with our, on that second bar, with these advisory tables for the past 3 months. We have 1 more meeting coming up with those advisory tables. We've been going through our Metropolitan Policy Advisory Committee, which includes a number of elected officials and others, to get advice along the way. We've been coming out to jurisdictions like you all to share this information and get your feedback, and we are having a community engagement process all the way throughout. We have a hearing set in late May before our council to present more of a final recommendation based on all the feedback that we receive on this draft, and then a date of June 7th set for the council to consider referring this to the ballot, which would then go to the November ballot. So we'd be more than happy to answer any questions you may have or receive your feedback.
You mentioned 4 cities that are eligible for federal funding. Are you anticipating that the housing would only go to those 4 cities, or
No.
those are just ones that you have to work with in setting this program up?
So communities of 50,000 people or more are considered participating jurisdictions by the federal government, and they receive CDBG funding directly. So it's tied to the size of the community. I believe the county receives CDBG funds here in Clackamas, but there's no city of that size. That just means that the funds will be dispersed in the way that Mr. Shaw just described throughout the county and through the housing authorities, but some additional funds will go to those cities for other kinds of work.
Well, let me follow that up. The city of Gladstone does not have a formal housing authority. Clackamas County does. But if Gladstone, because of its proximity to transit and to jobs in the Portland metro area, were considered a desirable location for one of these projects, could the city of Gladstone, if the measure passed, be a host city for one of these projects?
Absolutely. Really, we're looking for local implementation partners. So we're looking for the 3 counties and the 4 cities that currently take federal dollars and local dollars and use them to build housing. So really, the 4 cities are additional partners for us to work with, and they already have some program operating. But so the way it would work in Clackamas County is the Clackamas Housing Authority would look for sites, look for willing participants, look for partnership to locate sites and to build homes. Yes.
Thank you.
You were one of the nonprofits.
Yep. Or one of the nonprofits.
You stated smaller units and larger units. So what are we looking size-wise at? I mean, are you talking a family with 1 child, 2 children, or 4? So what are you looking at there?
What we're hearing from community is to allow for family-sized units that sometimes include multiple generations. So 2+ bedrooms is how we've defined, but we're hearing 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms are the kind of size that you really need for a lot of families that are looking for housing stability. And then on the smaller side, you're looking at single individuals, sometimes seniors, and sometimes on the flip side, folks that have been struggling with homelessness, and you want to get them wrapped with services and into having a permanent, safe place to live. So we're trying to put this balanced package together that reflects these pretty disparate needs and express that to the counties so that they can go out in the community, work with nonprofits, work with their community to identify sites. And there may be times when you're building an all-families building, and it's multifamily. Maybe times when you're building a unit that is just for people recovering from alcohol and drug dependency. We visited a site down near Happy Valley that was for families recovering from alcohol and drug dependency. It was a fantastic facility run by a nonprofit just a little south of here, I think. Yes.
So would that be like a common unit, where you have the kitchen and everybody sharing, or is it individual?
Generally, they are apartments.
Okay.
They may share a common space. For example, the location we went to had a playground in the middle for the kids, and then a common room for people to use. Otherwise, it's a kitchen, it's a living room, it's bedrooms in a normal apartment fashion. And to look at these buildings, they look like a modern multifamily apartment building. We actually drove around the block looking for this one, couldn't find it because it looked just like everything else in the neighborhood.
And that's the goal, is that affordable housing shouldn't stand out. It should look like anything else in the neighborhood and be complementary to the buildings around it. So design is paid close attention to during the development process.
All right, so the need is now. Government works slow. So what assurances do we have that the need is going to be met sooner rather than later?
So our goal our goal is to get the money all out the door in 5 to 7 years. So that is a
complete projects.
Yes. So to spend those dollars in 5 to 7 years and realize the goals that we've laid out of 2,000 to 3,200 units in that time frame. So the goal would be to be able to serve 6,000 to 10,000 people in that 5 to 7 year time frame.
And I like to caution people when I'm talking about this that the development process is lengthy. From the time you identify a site, what's it near, what's the best amenities, is it suitable for seniors or families, and then you go through design and construction and completion and lease up and all those things is easily 3 years. The development process is that long. On top of that, then, when we're competing for those other funding sources that I mentioned earlier that are housed at the State Housing Agency in Salem, that will give us that opportunity to leverage and put more units on the ground. It is sometimes a competitive process depending on which funding sources you're going after, so you could easily apply one year and not make it and then have to wait and apply the next year. So I caution people, don't expect that we'll have units on the ground within 6 months, but we will be working on it, and as Andy said, the goal is to get that money out the door. The process is lengthy, but we'll be watching it and be on top of it.
So I'm assuming then this is only a small part of the big toolbox. We're looking at other options to meet the needs quicker.
I mean, not to be a downer, but the gap that we identified in all of the study work we did was about 50,000 units that were short for the 0 to 60% median family income. Portland Metro region wide.
50,000.
And we're talking about 2,000 to 3,200 units with this bond measure. The Portland City has adopted a $258 million bond measure, and they're working their way through acquisition of sites and construction of new units. There are ongoing resources that local governments have that come mostly from the federal government, some from the state government. The state, a number of jurisdictions lobbied the state legislature to put more funding in place, and they adopted a higher document recording fee last session, increasing the amount of state funding available. So there are a number of tracks moving forward to identify how we fill this gap, but we're taking steps to fill it, not solving the problem.
Okay. You end up cobbling together a number of funding sources to complete that capital view.
I have a bunch of notes here. Did I miss the duration of the bond, Andy?
You know, when we sell bonds, we sell them in bits and pieces over time, so it just depends on what the market bears at that moment.
One tranche to another and just
correct. Usually they're 20-year bonds, but if the market had a better rate for 15 or 30, then we would purchase those bonds, whatever is the most efficient and effective for the public.
Okay. The other question I had was, I'm assuming we do a lot of housing inventory analysis. I'm just curious about how you feel like, I guess, Councilor Dominguez, going into the competitive existing inventory market, whether we're getting folks who may be pushing back at us already just in the conversation. I don't know if that's true or not, but I would assume that if you have an inventory that's obviously an exhaustible inventory, some folks would probably feel like they're missing their opportunity as a private or an equity investor. Are we getting any pushback, to your knowledge, about that out in the community?
No, not at all. Not that I've heard.
No, we've had private developers at the stakeholder table and the technical table, and we've worked with a number of folks, the Home Builders Association sitting at the table. Right. They're as concerned about this housing crisis as we are. They're much more interested in getting the market rate housing supply going faster as we are. And we need to be working on all ends of the spectrum. But they're also deeply concerned about the homelessness problem and the folks that can't afford rents.
Over the years, there have been a number of market rate for-profit developers that have done affordable housing and done it well. And just so you know, when we're putting public subsidy into these projects, there are regulatory documents that are filed against the property that ensure that it stays affordable for 60 years. In the city of Portland, they require 99 years. So this market rate for-profit developer isn't going to sell the project and make a lot of money on it. So they really are in it because they care about the mission as much as all of our nonprofits do.
And I guess my question is more about the existing inventory that we might take on to turn into an affordable housing inventory. You had mentioned there's kind of two branches or two roadways, and that's my curiosity, is whether that existing inventory is something that they would want to be competitive about or feel that government's kind of getting in the way of their market. I'm just asking it as a question. It's not a red herring question. It's more...
Yeah. No, we're not hearing anything.
Okay,
no.
That's good.
There's also no Home Flippers Association that we
work with. Right. Yeah.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Right?
Yes.
So if I may, before I leave, as a counselor, I am able to advocate, although Mr. Shaw can't, and I would encourage the council and the members of the community, please, please, please support this measure for the constitutional amendment and the GEO bond, and let's get some housing on the ground that's desperately needed, especially in our communities here in Clackamas County. So please vote for those. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next item is the school board update. We have Nicole Vera Cousins.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for having me tonight.
Didn't we just see you guys?
We did. And I'll keep it really short. I don't really have anything tonight. I just want to appreciate our partnership that we've been having and working together as a school board and city council. And some of the projects that we may be partnering on in the future, if a food pantry and clothes closet would be great. And we last week passed the school budget as the budget committee, and it will come to school board tomorrow night. And that's about it. Graduation's coming up, things like that, so the year's almost over. Teacher Appreciation Week for us this week as staff and things like that, and school's just running pretty smoothly right now, so it's going good.
Well, I just want to say thank you for allowing us to have this relationship. I know I put it in an email to all of you, but I'm surprised to hear how unique it is that a city council works with a school board.
Yeah.
It is, which just astounds me. I don't understand why that's the case, but
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next item is public hearing and action item to establish park system development charges, SDCs. First is public hearing on establishing park system development charges. Hear and consider written or oral testimony on the proposed establishment of park system development charges. Can everybody hear back there? We seem to kind of be moving away from the microphones. All right, staff.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So a little bit of history. Well, I'll first introduce myself. I'm Jim Wynot, Public Works Director for the City of Gladstone. This is John Gillarducci. He's with SCS Group, and he's the consultant that put together our report. So a little bit of history here. We did our Parks Master Plan, started that in 16, and we finished that up late last year. And after that, we started working on the SDC report that you have in your packet tonight. We did the 90-day notice back in March, back 90 days, and then right after that we got the report available for view 60 days previous to now. So we gave a 60-day notice on that. John has a PowerPoint up here he's going to go through. This is the same PowerPoint we've seen at the Parks Board and Council work session here a couple months ago. So we want to go through it really quickly, mainly for the audience, probably more than anything, but to kind of talk about SDCs a little bit and how we got to where we're at.
Okay, and if any of you can't see, come on up. I know it's kind of tilted, so the audience can't see it very well.
So I'll do some, thank you, Jim, thank you, Mayor and Council. I'll do some brief background and then get right into the main inputs in our calculation, growth and the cost basis for the charge, and then summarize the calculation itself. We have some comparisons in the region to show you, and then we'll talk about the next steps. So as a refresher, system development charges are the one-time fees paid by growth. So, excuse me. If you already own a home in Gladstone and you're not planning on developing something new, you're not paying a system development charge. These are the mechanism that the state provides for growth to pay for its impacts, growth to pay for growth. We follow the law very carefully in ORS 223, 297 through 314. There's also a lot of case law out there that we've tracked since the SDC law was effective in 1991. So, as I say, we follow all that, the statute and the case law. The calculation is pretty straightforward. There are two components, usually in a system development charge, or I should say provided for in statute. The reimbursement fee is a buy-in to any existing available capacity that growth can use. We don't have that with the park system here in Gladstone, so our focus is on the improvement fee. And the improvement fee is all about that list of planned projects that was adopted with the Park Master Plan and the growth share of each of those projects. So there's a portion of those projects which is adding capacity for future users. That's the portion of each project that we can include in the calculation. We divide the total of those projects, the growth portion of those projects, by growth, and that gives us our improvement fee, and then the system development charge. So focusing on that first key input, that being growth, we follow very carefully the growth in the master plan. So you see population numbers at the bottom of this table. Expected growth in 10 years, a little over 400 people. And then expected employee growth, we are expressing those as residential equivalents here because they can't access the parks as much as a resident. We adjust for that. So total growth in residential population equivalents, basically the equivalent of one person in population, 592 people in the next 10 years. That will be the denominator in the charge calculation. The numerator starts with the project list, so this is a summary of the projects in the adopted parks plan. You see where it says acreage additions, dog park, neighborhood parks, trails. The project cost in the far right-hand column there, $2,202,500, is actually the sum of the three numbers below. And in master planning, that number, $120,000, is the sum of community, neighborhood, and trail master planning numbers. So those subtotals plus the two rows at the bottom there, growth share eligible parks, and this is again a summary of a much longer list, and those projects that do not increase capacity and therefore are not eligible. The sum total of all of those is that $4.6 million you see there. Just a spoiler alert, only a portion of these projects is includable in the system development charge, that being the portion of each which is adding capacity for growth. Could you advance it one slide? This is a lot of words basically stating that we take great care to make sure and deduct the portion of each project which is not providing capacity for future users, and this is the methodology we use. The result is shown in this bottom table here. You'll recognize the $4.6 million in the middle of that table, that middle column. The percentages next to that are the amounts, again, the weighted averages for each of those park categories. That's the percentage of each project category that is providing capacity for future users. So that column on the right, the improvement fee eligible portion, that's going to be the numerator in our charge calculation, $1,781,045. Just a portion of the $4.6 million, which was the total list. So to calculate the system development charge, we take that $1.7 million, divide it by the projected growth to the end of the planning period in RPEs. That's the 592, which you saw several slides ago. And the resulting improvement fee is $3,009 per residential equivalent. The law allows us to add what we're labeling here a compliance fee that allows the city to recover the cost of administering and accounting for the SDC program. So that's estimated to be about $51 per residential equivalent. So the total improvement fee, $3,060 per residential equivalent. The way that's applied is by average occupancies for the different types of residential dwelling units in Gladstone, and then a charge for new commercial development based on the square footage and the type of the commercial establishment. So the table at the bottom there, on the left-hand side, a single-family residential charge, a new single-family residence, the Park SDC legal maximum $7,477, and you see different results, lower depending on the occupancy for different types of dwelling units, multifamily and accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. And that right-hand table shows how a new commercial development would pay or would be charged a system development charge based on the average number of employees per 1,000 square feet and, again, the type of new development. You have a resulting SDC per 1,000 square feet depending on the type of non-residential or commercial development. So to give you an idea of how that compares in the region, and this is by no means a complete list, but a pretty fair sample from neighboring cities and communities. You see North Clackamas, which is currently undergoing an update with a few of its different area-specific charges. Oregon City, Gladstone's proposed charge at $7,477. The Happy Valley charge is recently adopted. They actually had a much higher calculated number, but the council chose to adopt a fraction of the legally defensible number to settle on that $7,000. And then you see a couple of the higher charges in the region there too, including West Lynn and Lake Oswego. So, as Jim mentioned, the draft of the report has been available for at least 60 days, which is required by statute. This is the public hearing, and the council now has the option to act tonight or sometime after tonight.
With that, are there any questions for us?
Questions?
Yeah, when do the SDCs go into effect for, say, is it when they get a permit to do a new building, or there's some development going on right now that is, they haven't started the buildings yet. They're just getting all the land plotted out and sewers and everything done.
Right, so it's tied to the building permit. So basically they would have to pay, they would have to finish all their public improvements and all that stuff, and then they would take and, before they could go to the county and get the building permit, they verify that the cities received the SDC funds. So that's kind of the trigger, yes. And we do have some projects that are going on that have already beat this. So a lot of them have come in and anticipating this charge and trying to get ahead of it, so, yes.
When does this go into effect then?
Tomorrow. I mean, this is a resolution. If you do your hearing tonight and you guys pass it unanimously, and then you do your second reading and such,
Yeah.
so you got that process to go through.
Okay.
All right. Do we have anybody that wanted to comment on this agenda item? Tammy?
I have none.
Okay.
Can I ask one quick question? Sorry about this. I just had to think about it. I'm doing some math here. Councilor, maybe Councilor, Public Works Director, why not? So when we've been meeting and talking about these SDCs, one of the things that's starting I'm becoming aware of is we're making up for a lot of lost time, are we not? I mean, we've been trying to put these into play.
Absolutely.
My curiosity about this, and I'm glad that we looked at the ADUs, because as we're having conversations throughout the region about the best way to kind of tackle the housing crisis, City of Portland finds the ADU plan or ADU strategy as a good strategy. I just did some quick numbers. I think we're still, possibly, are we not, for an ADU, which would come in at 1.45 on the RPE, we'd be around 24,000, 25,000 in total SDC buy-in. Is that correct?
Correct. At this point, we still have our transportation SDCs to update, and then we're done with SDCs. So we have updated them all. If this is approved tonight, our SDCs for a single-family home would be right around 27,000.
Okay, so 27,000 on a potential ADU build or something of that nature pushes it up to about 16 to 17% on a $150,000 build out, right? So my question is, you know, as we go forward with this, we've got to at least realize that and address it, right? Because it does put us in a position where somebody coming in to try to do that on their property, if they're going to build out at $150,000, $170,000, say, we're 16 to 22%. I don't know how the banks deal with that. Frankly, it would be another $27,000. I just think, I'm not against it, I just want to make sure we're aware that if you're going to finance a $180,000 or $160,000 project and it's going to be an ADU, you're going to have to come up with that 16 to 22%.
Right.
And most likely on your own, because I don't believe the banks will necessarily finance it, unless somebody has better information than I do about the financing.
Yeah, that, I'm not sure. John can probably speak to some, how it's, we size up to other cities in the area. But you can also look at it as, if the development doesn't pay its way, then the existing citizens are
Agreed.
paying for that.
I
Okay.
don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree.
And the only other thing about ADUs is that does depend on how you deal with ADUs through the other SDCs. If they're not adding a water meter, for example, they may not be charged a water SDC, and that would reduce the amount.
And I think
for
that's a
building
good point. I just want we don't have the developable land in this city, so if we end up having to look at densities, I just want to make sure we're eyes wide open as we walk into it. I'm not opposed to it at all. I'm just saying that it's something for us to talk about, because we have gone from 0 to 60 on SDCs, and I think rightfully so. So, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Would someone like to make a motion to close the public?
I would, Mayor. I'd like to make a
second
motion,
the
we
motion.
close the public hearing for the Resolution 1136 on system development charges for parks.
I'll second.
Motion was made by Councilor McMahon, tied for a second with Councilor Milch and Councilor Tracy. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing's closed. All right, so next is to consider approving Resolution 1136, a resolution to establish a system development charge, SDC, for parks. And Chad, I usually have the attorney do this to make sure that all of our wording is accurate. Could you do the first reading, please? Or Jackie, would
It's
you like to do
actually
it?
just a resolution. It's not an ordinance, so all you have
Okay.
to do is approve it by a motion. There's no second reading required for the
Oh,
resolution.
okay, so we don't have to do a roll call vote, or?
That's correct.
Mayor, I make a motion to approve Resolution 1136, implementing park system development charges.
I'll second it.
Motion was made by Councilor Milch and seconded by Councilor Neese. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? SDC is passed for parks. All right, next item is housekeeping ordinance for the Urban Renewal Agency to consider approval of ordinance 1488, ratifying the activation of the Gladstone Urban Renewal Agency. Staff?
Mayor, I am going to have our city attorney address this item for you.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, Chad Jacobs from the City Attorney's Office. What you have before you tonight is really a housekeeping ordinance, and we've been working with your bond counsel in looking at some of the financing issues that you talked about earlier this evening. And because the Urban Renewal Agency was created 30 years ago, and this is really the first time that you're going to be issuing debt, we think it's in the best interest of the Urban Renewal Agency and the city just to clarify everything for the banks, to basically reauthorize and reaffirm the ordinance that was passed 30 years ago. It really doesn't have any true legal effect on the outcome or where things are going. It just makes things cleaner for the financing process. So in working with bond counsel, they recommended that we go ahead and do this. Our office looked at it and concurred, and so we've presented to you tonight.
Any questions? Do we have anyone that wants to speak on this agenda item?
I have none.
Would someone make a motion then?
I would move that we approve ordinance number 1488, an ordinance of the City of Gladstone ratifying the activation of the Gladstone Urban Renewal Agency.
I'll second.
Motion was made by Councilor Milch and seconded by Councilor Tracy. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ordinance 1488 has been passed.
And now we will do a second reading since it was unanimously approved, and this is an ordinance. So we'll call for the motion again, and then when you're ready, the city recorder can do a roll call vote.
All right. Would somebody make a motion then?
I move the second reading, do I say that, of ordinance number 1488, an ordinance of the City of Gladstone ratifying the activation of the Gladstone Urban Renewal Agency.
I'll second.
Motion was made by Councilor Milch, seconded by Councilor Tracy. Any further discussion? Tammy, could you please take a roll call vote?
Counselor Milch?
Yes.
Counselor Neese?
Yes.
Counselor Tracy?
Yes.
Counselor Reisner?
Yes.
Counselor McMahon?
Yes.
Mayor Stemple?
Yes. Passed. All right, thank you. Next item is Senior Center Work Plan.
Okay, I'm going to have the Senior Center Manager, Colin Black, come up and present this to you. You will note, or Tammy's going to hand out a note that we received at 5:45 p.m. this evening in regards to the work plan, and I believe that Colin and Colette will address that.
Good evening, Council. How's everybody tonight?
Hello, good. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you for having us up here and taking a moment to review this. I hope everybody had an opportunity to read the staff report for this. And are there any questions on this or the work plan?
No, looking at the work plan, and even though I missed the meeting, and being on the Senior Center Advisory Board, I think this is a great plan, and I think it's very doable with the group that's there. That's it's not going to be a huge reach for the folks that are spending their time there. So I think this looks very good. Well done.
And I hope everybody's had an opportunity now to read the 2 emails, and if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to address them at this time.
No, I'm excited about all these work plans, how everybody's getting organized and
Yes.
focused. It's wonderful.
Absolutely. We're ready to get moving on this.
All right.
Colin?
Yes, sir.
What are your plans to get more citizen input beyond the board of the senior center as you seek to implement these things? I know you're talking about setting some goals and doing some additional programs. And is this just the purview of the board itself, or do you have ways of involving citizens also?
Oh, right now this is just the launching pad, I guess you could say, to get those ideas and get options generated to present to the board, and then for the board to move forward and perhaps even make recommendations to the council as they see fit.
All right. So do you want us to make a motion on this one then?
I think it'd be most appropriate for the council to recommend approval of the Gladstone Senior Center Advisory Board work plan for fiscal year 2018-19.
I would like to make that recommendation for the Gladstone Senior Center Advisory Board work plan for the fiscal year 2018-2019.
And I will second that.
Motion was made by Councilor McMahon and seconded by Councilor Neese. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Work plans passed. Thank
Excellent.
you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Next item is the appointment to Traffic Safety Commission. Looks like we only have one applicant.
We do, and he would like to provide public comment this evening.
Good. You're the one. I knew there was something you were going to talk about.
My name's Andrew Labonte. I'd love for you to accept my application for the Traffic Safety Board or Commission. I've worked in driver safety for 20 years. It's my full-time profession and my hobby.
Wow, perfect.
So I truly feel that I could be a benefit to the city and to the board and sharing my information, some of my knowledge.
Wonderful. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Labonte? Would someone like to make a motion?
Sure. I'm move that we appoint Andrew Labonte. Is it
Labonte?
Labonte. To the term on the Traffic Safety Commission to expire December 31st, 2019.
I'll second that.
Motion was made by Councilor Reisner, seconded by Councilor McMahon. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Welcome.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
And if there's any other committees that you're interested in, let us know. Careful. I got to ask that question to everybody. All right. So number 12 was moved up. That brings us to 13, which is contract for Phase 1 Progressive Design Build on the Gladstone Civic Center project. Staff.
Mayor, Council, we are absolutely thrilled to bring this before you this evening, and I'm having our project manager, Kim Knox, and Public Works Director Jim Wynot and Police Chief Jeff Jolly to assist me with the staff report this evening, and then we'll also do some introductions of our new team in the audience at the appropriate time. So, Kim?
Well, I want to make sure that you guys speak into the microphone, and if anybody out there can't hear, let us know, and we'll make sure that we make adjustments.
Thank you, Mayor. Nice to see you all again. My name's Kim Knox with Shields Opletz Johnson. I've been hired by the City of Gladstone to serve as your owner's rep for the Gladstone Civic Center. Last time we spoke, we talked about kind of the selection process we'd gone through, a very robust response from the community of developers, and at that time you authorized us to enter into a conversation with the top team, PNC Construction, with Scott Edwards Architects, and so we've done that since we last saw you. And so we're here to report that we've successfully come to an agreement about the scope of work and a fee for this first phase of the project. Before I go into that, however, let me talk a little bit about the strengths that the selection committee had about the PNC team, what they put together. Overall, they had a great combined interview and proposal score that was the highest of all the evaluation of all the proposals made. They have a strong portfolio of successful not only civic buildings but also police facility work. They're well organized and a very collaborative team proposal they put together. We looked quite a bit at kind of how the team worked together in the interviews and that sort of thing, because we're looking for collaborative partners that can really listen to what the city's priorities are and can be able to execute that and problem solve, and that's a critical aspect of this. The strong leadership and a strategy for figuring out and staying within the city's budget, and that PNC was willing to supplement their team with additional police facility expertise. That was the one thing of the teams that we felt that they were not quite as strong as some of the other proposals, and so they were willing to supplement that expertise on their team. Basically the project budget, as a result, I think when we spoke last time, we talked about we received 5 proposals in the RFP. There was a proposal that people give us their feedback on. The budget that the city had been carrying was about $10.5 million. Oh, somebody owes $5.
Yeah.
No.
Wait, we want
Where's
to hear
the bull?
what's that mean?
Based on some work, very preliminary programming work that was done in 2016 for the city, that was some basic programming and some basic per square foot costs. That budget that was submitted at that time was about $10.5 million, absent a whole lot of extra spending a whole lot of resources trying to figure out an actual budget. What we did with the process was just say, okay, here's the budget we're working from. Does this seem like a reasonable budget, and what would it take to reach this budget? So we asked that of all the proposers in the RFP process. So what we felt we got was some very consistent themes from across the board. So these are a bunch of people trying to compete to get a job, and what that showed us was a combination of is that a realistic budget, and what would it take to get there? And so based on that feedback, one of the very common themes was, yes, of course you can meet your $10.5 million budget. Everyone will tell you that. You'll just have to either compromise program, look at some other ways to not meet the quality of building you might be looking at, you might be preferring, reevaluating what infrastructure needs you really might have. Do you really have to spend this amount on your public infrastructure? Those are the kinds of things. So from that, we took away a very clear conclusion that everyone basically also then kind of recommended, given what we know of the marketplace, given of what we know about other police facilities, here's a range that we'd recommend basically on a per square foot basis, what your project would more likely come in at. And based on that, the committee has decided to proceed with a proposal where we would, and this is what's in the agreement, would have increase the budget to $12 million from the 10.5 for the base building that's described in the RFP, and then reserve about $775,000, I think is what we ended up with, $775,000 for unknowns, things that hadn't been considered, whether it's equipment or some other things that over the course of designing the process, the city at its discretion may choose to add to the project. Understanding that all of this budget stays within the $13.8 million total that Jackie mentioned earlier. So we stay within that. We've provided the city with a control over, here's your base project, and here's the city's cushion if the city chooses to add more to it. Don't have to, but if we choose to do it, that would be an option. So that's what we felt was kind of the best way to give the city best control. Again, absent any design work. We're trying to come up with a number so that we're all working together on this, but because no design work has been done, no materials have been discussed, nothing's been discussed, but the team agrees, we're all working towards that. That's our goal. That's our maximum. The cost is a strong driver for the city of Gladstone. There's just not margin for error to try to go back for more money. There's just not. So then the other piece in this memo that I put together is kind of a roadmap of what's in what could otherwise be considered a pretty confusing AIA standard agreement, a design build agreement. And basically it defines what everyone agrees is the building program, which again was consistent with what we had in the RFP process. The project budget, so that's where we talk about this $12 million building, $775,000 additional work that's at the owner's discretion to add to the project if they choose to do that, and that the phase 1 scope of work is identified, again, consistent with the RFP, but it also, what the agreement is, puts a dollar value on that phase 1 work that was developed by PNC Construction. So as part of their proposal, they said for this phase 1 scope of work, the dollar amount now I'm squinting here, 400 and help me
451
there, 572. Thank you. So what you'd be approving tonight is a contract with PNC Construction for phase 1 work for that dollar amount. You're not approving the total project, you're just approving phase 1. It's the city's discretion if at the end of phase 1, when the team has had an opportunity to do its design work and come and develop a guaranteed maximum price for the total building, if we get to the end of phase 1, can't come to an agreement that's acceptable, the city can then decide to not proceed on to phase 2. It's at your discretion, and we'd have to figure out what happens next, but we don't anticipate that it would stop there. But again, there is another checkpoint at the end of phase 1. So all you're approving right now is this $451,572 amount. And that phase 2 scope of work is in there, again, consistent with what was in the RFP. And then that PNC is committed to complete the phase work by November 1st of this year, assuming you authorize the agreement tonight. And then notice to proceed would be then occurring by next week. And then the projected building completion is March 2020. So that's it. Blah, blah, blah. Is that plenty of information? And I'm getting notes passed to me.
Before they introduce the team, I have a Scribner's error. I want to make sure I'm telling you this. On page 1333, under 1.1.7, when it says October 1st, 2018, that should read November. And in the documents that they'll be signing, it does, but it did not make the correction in your packet. That's a milestone date of November 1, 2018. Thank you.
All right. So the notes that were passed to me is the team that that we've got here tonight. Do you want me to introduce them, Jackie, or do you?
Sure, they
okay.
can just stand real
they
quick.
Can stand.
Yes, we're excited.
All right. So, from P&C Construction. So, just before I say this, so what the structure you've decided, the city has proceeded for this procurement is what's called a progressive design build. So what you have here is a team of, that's led by the contractor, and that also has an agreement with the architect already on their team. They're all responsible to each other, and they're going to execute this project for you. So here's the team, and I know there was very strong support and high enthusiasm about this team. So from PNC Construction, we have Steve Anderson and Will Sohm back there. They wear
What are the names again? Who's who?
Sorry.
Steve.
Steve Anderson.
Steve Anderson.
Will Sohm. And they're color-coded. We put all contractors in blue. So I can't remember who the contractor, they're the ones in blue. And now are the architects wearing black like they're supposed to? Mostly. Good. No bow ties. So we have Sid Scott from Scott Edwards Architecture and Jennifer, say your last name, Jennifer. Marcicek. And then, so they will be your design build team, or your progressive design build team. I will continue on, actually I can't officially continue on until you do your next action, but I would continue on as your owner's rep for the next phase of the project.
The only thing I will add is that this team is absolutely enthusiastic about the community engagement aspect of going forward with the design build. This is the community's buildings, and they are going to be very good advocates for that, and we're very excited about that.
The one thing I will add to is we've reached out to all the proposers that participated in the project and offered an opportunity to do a debrief with them, to let them know anybody that wants to come chat. And so I already have 3 of the teams have already reached out and wanted to talk about kind of what they did and what they could have done differently, and that's, or where they didn't score as high and that sort of thing. So those have been scheduled. Huge effort on the part of all 5 teams. So I think we feel pretty lucky that we've got great choices and a great outcome. So.
Well, welcome on board. Welcome. This is so exciting.
Would it be inappropriate I say one comment?
No, please.
Well, thank you so much. So, very interesting. Kim, thank you so much for all the kind words. But I've been doing this for about 30 years, and I've done many interviews. And sometimes we're being interviewed, but we're also interviewing the people across the table. And I will commend the 3 folks up there at the front and the other 2 you had involved, and Jackie, that it was a great interview, and we walked out of there thinking those are really, really good people to work for. So I think that's part of that collaboration that we oftentimes lose that as contractors, that it's the people on the other side that really make the project successful. So we're really enthused, and I appreciate the kind words, and hopefully everything goes swimmingly well, and we're back here sooner rather than later just reporting on how well it went. But we got a really good feeling during the interview, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Do you guys have any questions?
No, they already answered mine.
Yeah, your one question got answered. All right, so then we need to make a motion.
Yes, you need to authorize me to sign a big document.
Out of here. Would someone like to make a motion, please?
Mayor, I move that we authorize the city administrator to enter into an agreement with P&C Construction to provide Phase 1 progressive design build services for the Gladstone Civic Center project in the amount of $451,572.
I'll
I will
second.
second it.
Motion was made by Councilor Milch and seconded by Councilors Reisner and Councilor Neese. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passed. Thank you.
Yay.
Yay.
Sure.
Woohoo.
Forward.
I feel like we need a glass of wine now. Really, or champagne or something. Did you bring the wine? You're supposed to bring the wine.
Somewhere, don't you, for your slugs?
All right, so the next item is number 14, which is City of Gladstone First Amendment to Personal Services Agreement.
Yes, so back in January, when the city was going through the RFQ process, the request for proposals process, Gladstone does not have a project manager on staff, And so we went and hired Shields Olbitz Johnson, Kim Knox, to do that first phase of us, which tonight just completed. And we're trying to be very fiscally responsible with our project management dollars. And so instead of approving a contract for all 3 phases, we would just like to continue Kim on for the next design build phase of the project. And what that would require then is for you to allow me to amend the current personal services agreement so that she can continue as the owner's representative for phase 1 through the design build project with an amount not to exceed $53,540. It is funded from the Civic Buildings Capital Fund, and it is in our project budget that we talked to you about this evening. Should we want to continue through the construction phase, I would come back to you for a second amendment at that time, and that money has already been projected in our budget, so it is there if we need it. But we've been exceptionally pleased with this process. This is the first civic building that Gladstone is doing, and we want to do it right, and this will allow the police chief and the public works director and myself to do our regular duties. So we're very appreciative of the work that Kim has put into it, and we'd like to recommend that we continue her on to the next phase.
Any questions? Would someone like to make a motion?
Yeah, I would, Mayor. I'd like to move that we amend the, I don't know, wherever it is, that we make the new agreement so that we pay the $53,000 up to $53,540 for the phase 1 for the progressive design build services.
I'll second.
Motion was made by Councilor McMahon.
Even delayed.
Seconded by Councilors Reisner and Councilor Tracy. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. All right. So the next is business carried forward, which we moved the council training up to that piece.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and I just want to preface this discussion by saying that it was never my intent to do anything illegal with the City Council or myself. LB Day and Company has been providing facilitation services for us for the past 3 years, and we were simply trying to provide an environment where our City Council could get together and try to improve how we communicate and operate with each other. And so when we talk about, well, who wanted it a closed session and who wanted it an open session, to quite honestly, it was a mix of you, and all of you could have gone either way. Some of you were more vocal about it than others. But LB Day also thought that it would be good for us to have it in an environment where we could just be together to talk about how do we improve our relationships as a council. I think all of you agree that the training is worthwhile. I think where we erred was that I did not notice it as a public meeting because I didn't think it was a meeting. I thought it was training. And so I will take the blame for that. But moving forward, what I'd like to do is to set a date so that we can complete the 5 hours of training that LB Day has prepared us for. And so what the outcomes would be is determine how council members can constructively define and resolve interpersonal issues, identify ways council members can communicate more effectively with each other, decide how council members can improve the functioning of the city council team, revisit how effective council members are in communication with key stakeholders. That is the intent of the training, and I understand that Gladstone historically has had a lot of scrutiny on executive sessions, closed sessions, excuse me. So my recommendation was that we just have it in open session. I'm fine with that. And if you could tell me a date, if we could get back to maybe doing it on a Saturday and pick a date and move forward, I really do think that that was the true intent of the council training.
Could we do a doodle poll or something? I know I don't have my calendar here in front of me.
Yes.
That seems to be working with everything else, Clackamas County. Okay.
Okay, great.
And it's open to the public?
That would be my recommendation, yes.
And
And
that's
I
all-
think
that's
the
what I would like.
majority of you would be okay with that.
All right, so the next item is business from the council. How about Councilor Milch?
I guess I want to thank Steve from our newly hired group for your comments about working with our staff and our team. As I'm sure Councilor McMahon will tell you, these new civic buildings, the ones who are going to benefit the most are from the staff that we have, who we feel about them the same way that you do. So it's good to get that feedback from an outsider, and we're very pleased that we're at this next step and moving forward. So thank you for that input.
Councilor Neese?
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
Councilor Tracy?
I'm going to echo Councilor Milch's comments. I also want to say that I'm coming out of tonight's meeting very appreciative of the professionalism of my colleagues up on the council and the dais at the moment, and I think we need to keep going forward with these positive moves towards building the city. One of the things that Councilor Dominguez and Mr. Shaw kind of brought to our attention is there are going to be a lot of folks coming into this area, and our city's going to be kind of pinched, and if we're not strong as a city and as a community, we're not going to be able to go forward and be as progressive as we want to in building a real thriving and vibrant environment for our citizens. And I think we need to do that by working cohesively together, by supporting what I also agree to be an excellent staff, and go forward and do some good things for the city. If we can just get the white noise out of the way and start going forward, I'd appreciate it, because honestly, I think to City Administrator Betts' point, no one was voting to have a closed session here. This was a training session. We need to be able to communicate amongst the seven of us and be able to actually work in a cohesive environment together so that we can better serve all of you as our community members. We truly appreciate the positions that we're in. So I'm very happy about tonight, and I want to pay my respects to everybody who's sitting here as my colleagues, and to you, our community members, because we're doing this for you. This is our community together, and I want us to go forward and make it as vibrant and as positive and as good as we can go. So thank you.
Thanks. Councilor Reisner?
So I just want to follow up on Sherry Hall's announcement about the election next Tuesday. Get your ballots in. We've got a very important item on there that we really need to have passed. And so join me, because I'm one that hasn't, and getting those in before the end of the week. Yeah, I'm honest, I'll tell you.
Neil.
So,
You got till Tuesday.
Right.
exactly. But it'll be in before then. So please vote, and have a great rest of your May.
Councilor McMahon?
Just super excited to be moving forward on this building. Again, I have to agree with all the other councilors. This is for the citizens, but more importantly, it's for the folks that work here. So, and I was very impressed with your comments too, sir, that and that's very true. A lot of times when you're in that kind of business, you're also looking at, okay, do we really want to work with this city? Are we going to get ourselves in a bind later on? And that's really, it makes me very happy to hear that you guys got a good feeling from our staff. And I'll just follow that up again with just the reports that we get all the time from the monthly staff of the good work that Public Works is constantly doing, fixing all our actually, they're all your headaches, but they are the city's headaches. Looking at what the fire department has done, the police department, Public Works, library, and senior center, they're all doing a fantastic job. City staff as well are all doing a fantastic job, so thank you very much.
Well, just two things, well, three things, I guess. First is the weekend before last, I was able to go watch our new water rescue team train on the Sandy River, and that was insane. Don't know why anybody in the world would want to do it, but our fire department's expanding to include swiftwater rescue and technical rescue, which I think is smart considering we're so close to the rivers. So they were all bruised and battered, but they made it through. Next is I completed the CERT training, community Community Emergency Response Team Training this past Saturday, and there's a couple other people out there that did it too. It's people that are ready for the big one, and what we have to do, how to put out fires, how to do cribbing, how to triage patients, all kinds of things, and it was eye-opening, it was wonderful, and I encourage everybody to get involved. If you don't have the time to invest in actual formal CERT training, get a neighborhood group together, pack a go bag, do whatever you have to do to get prepared, because our first responders are going to be so busy, we're going to have to do a lot of the front end work on our own. So please, absolutely go out and do that. And then last was just thank you very, very much for being here and spending your evening with us. Go home, take your socks off. Enjoy the evening. Oh, you can go ahead.
I'm good with you doing it.
Oh, we have bike night. Thursday?
Thursday,
Yep.
And if I could,
Yes.
please, Colin Black had two quick announcements that he wanted to do under my purview, and I didn't get to them, so.
Come on up.
Thank you. Just a quick reminder for everybody that can attend Thursday, Mother's Day luncheon at the Senior Center. I know your professions might keep you from participating, but know that you are always invited regardless. So we'll hope to see you. It is this Thursday, 11:30, to come down and enjoy some good food. This event is sponsored by the Senior Foundation, so very excited. And also, if you haven't seen the information on the Rivers East Village, there is an information series next Tuesday, May 15th at 10:30 at St. Stephen's Lutheran Church. I highly suggest that if you're interested to go get this information. I think it's something that as we move forward, especially in our work plans at the Senior Center and moving forward in the future, this would be something that might be very viable in our community.
What time is that again, Colin?
10:30 a.m. next Tuesday, the 15th, at St. Stephen's Lutheran Church on Gloucester Street. Thank you for the time.
Cool.
Is that someone like to make a motion?
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion was made by Councilor Reisner, seconded by Councilor Tracy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting's adjourned at 8:16 p.m.